So before we get started, check out the following links in the description box below as highlighted in the image shown. So you'll be able to get our past papers, our link to our official website, link to accreditations, our link to donation page, and contact details in the description. So once you'll be watching a certain video of any lesson or of any past paper, you'll be able to get all these links, and you can be able to get to download past papers, to reach to our official website. You'll be able to see links to our accreditations so that you can see which authorities have accredited us. You'll be able to reach to our donation page as well as our contact details. So welcome in our revision session. Today we want to have a look at communication skills 2023 December past paper. Let's revise and get to see some of the possible answers for the questions herein. So number one, we have number 1A. Distinguish between an advisory committee and an executive committee. So what is the difference between these two types of committees, the advisory committee and executive committee? Both of them, these are people who work in an organization, and that just from the word itself, when you talk of advisory committee, we refer to a certain committee made up of group of people with a special expertise in a certain area who can help you or give you advices in different areas whenever they are needed. That is why they're called advisory committee. And then when you talk of the executive committee is made up of the top managers or top level managers, and that is why they're called executive, because they are there as the people who will always decide, people who have authority to come up with the rules, people who have the authority to come up with decisions, and so on and so forth. So we want to have a look at some of the variables that we can use to distinguish between these two types of committee. So number one, we are using purpose and function. What's the purpose of advisory committee? And how is it different from the purpose of executive committee? Like just I have said earlier, you've said an advisory committee provides expert advice and even recommendations to organizations or board. So the committee is specifically meant for advice purposes. And then on the other hand, the executive committee has decision-making authority and handles executive functions. So they have decision-making authority. Why? Because we believe it is made up of people who are coming from the top level of management. That is why they have the decision-making authority and can as well handle executive functions. And then another distinguishing factor we can use is composition. Which people make up the advisory committee and which people make up the executive committee. As I said earlier, executive committee is made up by people from the top management. So let's have a look at who make up the advisory committee. So it is typically composed of individuals within specialized knowledge or experience relevant to the organization. So when you talk of advisory committee, it is not necessarily that it should be made up with people from the high level or from the top level of management. So long as you have an experience, so long as you have a certain expertise in a certain area, then you can make up an advisory committee. And then another feature that you can use to differentiate between the two is authority. And the advisory committee lack formal authority to make decisions within the organization, basically because they're specifically meant for this advisory purposes. But now the executive committee, they hold a formal authority to make decisions, since they're the people who fall in the top level of management. And then lastly, meeting and reporting. The advisory committee meet as needed to be provided recommendations. They normally make report where need be. We say they normally also make suggestions. They normally give opinions on certain areas. That is why we say they meet as needed to provide recommendation. They are specifically there for a certain advisory legislation. And then when you talk of the executive committee, these people, they meet regularly to manage ongoing executive function. Why? Because they belong to the top level of management. But when you talk of the advisory committee, these are just people who have a certain expertise or experience in a certain area, and they're just there to give you the direction in case you need. They're there to give you suggestions. They're there to advise you when you feel things are like a bit difficult for you to decide on the same, and so on. So those are some of the differences that we have between advisory committee and executive committee. We have question B, number 1B. Explain 6 reasons why interpersonal communication is essential at the workplace. Interpersonal communication is the ability to communicate well with others, between 2 people or between more than one person. So what are the reasons? Or why is interpersonal communication important in a workplace? Why is it essential in a workplace? Definitely, in general, we can say if you are that kind of a person who cannot communicate well with others, then a lot of conflicts, a lot of misunderstandings, and issues to do with performance will always be affected negatively. Basically because people within the organization do not know how to connect, do not know how to communicate with one another, or do not know how to even handle one another, and so on and so forth. So it's always good that to have these skills, because they're very much essential in terms of performance, in terms of the goals of the organization, and so on and so forth. So we want to look at the reasons why this kind of communication is essential in the workplace. Number 1, it enhances collaboration. You can only collaborate and cooperate well with others when you can communicate well. When there's effective communication between you and other people within the organization, that is when collaboration can be realized. Otherwise, when there's no effective communication, definitely collaboration becomes difficult as well. And then it also improves productivity, where people can sit, reason together, collaborate well, cooperate well. Definitely you perform. And once you perform, productivity will be realized, and that is why we are seeing this point, improves productivity. How does interpersonal communication improve productivity? Because people will be in a position to reason together. People will be in a position to communicate effectively. The decisions will be made effectively. Any kind of communication will be made effectively, and at the end of the day, things will be moving so smoothly, and that will affect performance in the positive way possible. Once people perform, automatically productivity is realized. So through interpersonal communication, the company can improve its productivity. Also, through interpersonal communication, relationships can be created and built. Yeah, because you know how to accommodate one another, you know how to talk to one another, you know how to address the different people that are there, because of how of the skills that you have as far as interpersonal communication is there. So definitely, when people can communicate well, understand one another, accommodate one another, automatically relationships are also created. And then also it facilitates conflict resolution. Yes, if there's effective communication, if you know how to communicate well with others, if you accommodate well others well in your communication, then that means whenever conflicts come, they'll be solved amicable without any problem, because people can sit down, effectively communicate with one another, and hence conflict resolutions also becomes easier. And then supports professional development. Yes, it's only through communication that people can develop. It's only through communication that training can be possible. So definitely, if there's effective communication within the workplace, people will be able to develop communication-wise, professional-wise, personal-wise, and so on and so forth. So there'll be room for professional development when there's good or effective interpersonal communication within the workplace. And then lastly, because the question is looking for 6 reasons, you have it enhances leadership. Leaders who communicate well will influence than those leaders who do not know how to communicate. Being a leader is not just being influential. You cannot be influential if you don't know how to communicate with people. So it's not unless you can communicate effectively with people, then that is how you can convince them, that is how you can persuade them, and that is how you can influence them. But if the act of effective communication is not in you as a leader, then the act of influencing the people you are leading will be very difficult. So it's through interpersonal communication that you as a leader can be able to lead well, can be able to influence those you're trying to influence in the most positive way possible, and so on and so forth. So those are some of the reasons as to why interpersonal communication is essential in an organization. Question 1C, and this brings us to the end of question 1C. Analyze the importance of each of the 5 stages of listening process. Importance of each stage of listening process. We all know that listening process has 5 stages. And these stages are 1, receiving, and then 2, understanding, 3, remembering, 4, evaluating, and then 5, responding. All these stages are very much important in order for you to listen effectively. There is no way you will skip even one of them and you be able to listen effectively. There is no way. Each stage is very important, and each stage has a meaning. In order for you to be able to go to the next stage, then you need to have understood this stage in order for you to go to the next stage. So if the first stage is not understood, or if the first stage is not well taken care of, even in the second stage, things will be messy until you reach at the end and nothing will be grabbed. So that means you'll not have listened anything. So listening is also a process that flows chronologically. It is also a process that follows a certain procedure. In order for you to listen effectively, gain the information that the speaker is giving out or the presenter is giving out, then you need to be attentive, and all these stages have to be in place in order for the listening to be effective. Otherwise, it's going to be ineffective. And when listening is ineffective, that means you'll not understand anything. And in case you're needed to give feedback, you'll not be in a position to give the feedback as well. So let's have a look at each stage and why it's important. So receiving is all about getting the information from the speaker or the presenter or whoever it is that you're communicating to. So in order for you to get the information, first listen and then open your ears, be attentive, and then receive that particular information. If you're not attentive, there's no way you'll receive even a single idea of whatever is being presented. So receiving, this becomes the first stage, which involves hearing and trying to get attentive and gather the information that you're supposed to gather. Once you receive this information, then the next stage is understanding. So the importance of receiving is that it's through receiving that you'll be able to understand. There's nothing you'll understand if you have not received anything. What is there to understand? That is why we said each and every stage has its own importance and has its own capacity in the listening process. So it's not unless you receive and get the ideas, then you'll be able to sit down, reflect, understand, or comprehend, and then you'll be able to move to the next stage. So receiving is very important. It is the stage that will help you to get those ideas that you're looking for, so that after there you sit down and see whether they are really getting into you. Are they really bringing some meaning? Are you understanding whatever is being presented? So receive and then understand. Try to comprehend whatever information is given to you. Try to interpret it. What meaning does it have? Understanding. So it's through understanding that you'll be able to connect, remember, so that you'll be able to share it out when need be. So the moment you receive, you sit down and interpret, get to understand, get to comprehend. The next thing is to remember. So you'll only remember if you understood the data or the information that you are given. If you did not understand, even remembering becomes a problem. So once you understand, the next thing is basically try to recall. What was that all about? It was about A, B, C, you remember. So that in case you need to pass it to someone else, you'll know how to compose it and give it to someone. So remembering is there. It's also another important stage that will help you to record the information, the data, or whatever it is that has been given to you. Record it in the memory so that you'll be able to remember, so that you retain it in your mind. In case you need to share it out, you know what to share. Once remembering has been also achieved, the next stage is evaluation. You evaluate. And in evaluation specifically, we are looking for what is relevant and what is not relevant, so that you retain what is relevant. If you feel this person has presented a lot of things, but I feel that, no, this one is not necessary, do away with it. you feel that this one is necessary and it's going to help you achieve something, that is what you need to retain. So evaluation is like you're trying to weigh the ideas or the information that you've received from the speaker so that you retain what you feel is going to be helpful and relevant for whatever case that it is. So after evaluating, that is when now you can respond. When you need to give feedback, then that is when you can go sit down, understand the evaluation process, have whatever you felt was relevant, and use whatever is relevant in that communication to respond to the receiver or to the person you are supposed to respond to. So that is the listening process. Every stage is equally important, and there is no way you will skip one stage and for you to listen effectively. No way. For you to listen effectively, each and every stage has to be taken into account. So that is number 1 of our paper. Thank you. Let's meet in our next paper. So if you like this video, you can always enroll with us. You'll be able to access more of these revision sessions. And also you'll be able to find well done lectures or pre-recorded videos for all the KASNEB courses as well as CHRP. And in case of anything, you can always reach us out. We have our contact details on the screen. Feel free to call, feel free to WhatsApp anytime. So thank you, and let's meet in our next session.